Hello, welcome back to Math Time with Professor Prime, and I'm your host as always, Professor Prime. And today we're going to talk about Math and Bayonetta, a super fun, ridiculous, and overtop in the best way possible series. Let's get into it. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about Bayonetta. I'm going to talk about the series as a whole, the gameplay in it, the story, the music, the structure, all of that, and how math plays a role in each of the things that I mentioned and more. And as I do so, I'm going to be talking about my experience with the series and how it plays a big role in gaming, and how I just have a blast with it. And I'm also excited for the next step. So, yeah, let's get started. Okay, so with Bayonetta, if you didn't know, it's an action game where it's an absolute blast. Throughout the games, there's two so far, with a third one coming down the line. You play as Bayonetta, and you go through just being awesome. um, the game that it gets compared to the most is Devil May Cry, and there is a good reason for that. Bayonetta was developed by Platinum Games, one of my favorite developers in gaming, and its head is Hideki Kamiya, who was the initial creator of Devil May Cry, which is awesome. So it makes a lot of sense. And what I think is really cool about that is not only can you see like the inspiration from Devil May Cry in the game, but over the years I've seen Bayonetta take inspiration from Devil May Cry, but also Devil May Cry take inspiration from Bayonetta. And I think that's really cool because there's no animosity there, or at least that I can see. With that being said, I'm gonna describe the gameplay from Bayonetta and then use that to talk about how math plays a role in that, and just let that lead into everything else. It should flow and flow well. That's the plan anyway. So with the gameplay, the idea is you have a mission structure, and you're going through the mission, unlocking parts of the story is you engage in combat. And with combat, the idea is style, the idea is combos, right? And there's a lot of math in those combos. There's a lot of math and being stylized, right? And also the amount of combos that you're doing, the crazy things that you're pulling off, that all plays a role in your score at the end of the, the end of the mission. And I think that's pretty cool too. And it's very reminiscent of Devil May Cry, and a lot of other games since those games have come out. But that being said, there's a lot of math in all of that, right? There's a math in oh god, sorry, my train of thought. But we're gonna keep it going. So there's a lot of math in how the missions are structured, but there's also like a lot of math in just the amount of missions, right? So you have a certain number of missions, and for the things that I'm saying, it works really well for the second game too, because the second game is structured like the first game in many ways. Just there's a lot of enhancements, but we can get into that too. So anyway, you have your missions, and then when you get into the actual combat, the idea is you're doing combos. You have different melee weapons and different guns as you go forward, right? And you're dealing out combos by pressing the button a certain amount of times, using timing, and taking advantage of the enemies that you're facing. Getting used to their animations, and planning accordingly. And there's math in all of that, right? Because there's math in the number of buttons that you need to press and how long, and in the timing, right? There's a lot of math in all of that. There's a lot of math in the items too, because the items do different things. Right, because you have items that heal you, recover your magic, make you stronger, make you invincible. But the trade-off is that they do all those things, but they either take money to get, or you find them. But no matter what, if you're using them, it does take away from your final score at the end of the level, right? You're gonna get a lower score for using items. That being said, I mentioned magic, right? Magic is a thing in the Bayonetta games. And so the use of magic, it can be strategic, and you want to keep an eye on your gauge, right? So right, there's a lot of math going on in terms of your gauge, your magic gauge, your health, and etc. Right? And I think that's worth noting. And I think that's really cool because the gameplay cannot be divorced from math. And that being said, it's really fun. And one of the big things within the game is like you're doing your wicked weave attacks. So Bayonetta is using her hair as a weapon and all that stuff, and that's pretty cool. And there's math and how all that flows and functions with the different arms that you have. But there's also the idea that there's torture attacks, which are like pretty much finishing moves where you have to press the button at the right time or repeatedly press buttons. And there's math and all of that. And they dish out more damage and like take out like some smaller enemies. And that's all cool. And then there's the idea of like summons that happen throughout the game, and there's a lot of math and how they function and flow. And one of the biggest parts of the combat is witch time. The idea that like Bayonetta can evade enemies, right? And if Bayonetta evades enemies at just the right time, like just as they're about to hit, witch time is activated, where Bayonetta is moving at regular speeds, but everything else is slowed down, and this allows like some freedom to do more combos or like dish out more damage. And there's a lot of math in how that flows, right? Because there's math in doing more damage, sure, and issuing out the combos, but there's math in the timing, in when you were doing witch time, and that's pretty cool. And getting a good read off of enemies and their animations and their timings. There's a lot of math in that too, and I think that's all pretty cool. And then there's math in how the story unfolds in the game. And I think Bayonetta is a pretty good game that has like a replay value, and the same can be said for the second Bayonetta. And I think that's really cool. And with the second Bayonetta, it pretty much took the things that worked about Bayonetta and tweaked them and added like different elements to the gameplay. You could do a bit more. And even though I'm not a fan of water levels, like I hate them with a fiery passion. Ironic, but or appropriate depending on how you view that. And Bayonetta, I didn't hate them because the things that like usually suck about water levels, they said screw it to. Like because you didn't have to worry about time limits for breathing underwater, and that relieves some pressure. But you also didn't have to worry about being slowed down. Bayonetta has a transformation like the Leviathan that allowed you to move through the water pretty fluidly. That being said, yeah, transformations are a thing too in the game. Like, you have certain situations that unleash certain transformations. Like, Bayonetta can also transform into bats, or a bat, and a panther, stuff like that, which is pretty cool because the panther you can move quicker, traverse like the level better, and with the bat you can like fly. There's cool stuff like that. Like I mentioned, the Leviathan you can swim, and it's pretty cool. So there's a lot going on with Bayonetta. Like just at the surface level, it's pretty cool. And with the music, I feel like it was very fitting and everything flowed well, and that could help with combat. That could help with like imparting certain emotions. And there's math in that, right? And there's math in how Bayonetta was programmed. There's math in the development and how much money it took. And speaking of money, that reminds me of something. So here's the thing about Bayonetta. It was developed by Platinum Games, right? Both the first one and the second one. And while the first one was developed by Platinum Games, it was published by Sega. And we'll get into that about the second one. But I think that's worth noting that it's a pretty cool team up. Sega and Platinum Games. And then for the second one, there were issues in the development and it got canceled. And so you had Sega and Platinum Games teaming up again, but it didn't work out at first. But then, who comes along? Nintendo. And so with Nintendo, they gave more funding, they gave more support. They were able to publish Bayonetta, but they made it exclusive. With Bayonetta, like the first one, it was available on multiple platforms, but with Bayonetta 2, just Nintendo. Sorry, just the Wii U originally. So later on, it would get ported to the Switch, so it's available just on Nintendo consoles. And while I know people weren't happy about that, there are multiple parties that like made it clear that if Nintendo didn't step in and provide that money, then Bayonetta 2 wouldn't have gotten made. And that would have been a shame because Bayonetta 2 is a glorious game. Like Bayonetta as a series is ridiculous and over top in the best possible way. It just goes insane with everything, and somehow Bayonetta 2 took that from like 1 but amped it up. So it's like you already had Bayonetta being ridiculous and over the top in the best possible way, but then Bayonetta 2 comes along and it just amps everything up, and I feel like that's super appropriate for the series. And I enjoy that because in both of these games you're having like crazy things going on, like pandemoniums all around. Buildings can get thrown at people. You can punch souls into the sun. Like all these sort of crazy things are happening. It's just a crazy wild game, and I am appreciative of that. But I brought up what I brought up because right there's a lot of money in gaming, right? On all sides, and there's a lot of math in that money. And when you're developing a game, right, you need a lot of money, you need a lot of support. And with Nintendo stepping in, I thought that was interesting because they did the math. They made Bayonetta 2 exclusive, and they gave money which they could absolutely afford to support Platinum Games. And meanwhile, Sega stayed on to help out with the project, right? And so you had this collaboration between Platinum Games, Nintendo, and Sega. And you know what? It worked out. It worked out really well. And while I wasn't able to play Bayonetta 2 when it first came out because I didn't have the Wii U, I was able to play it on the Switch when I got that. It was one of the games that I wanted to do. In fact, there's several games on the Wii U that I wanted to play but couldn't when the Wii U came out, but played it on the Switch. And with that, Wii U is not a bad console, but it didn't do particularly well. It was kind of caught in between, right? It was like you had Wii U, you have the Switch, and then you have the you have the Wii, you have the Switch, and you have the Wii U literally in the middle of them, both in a generational regard, but also technology. But things weren't fleshed out as well as they could be, right? But they had a lot of good things that would be refined later on, I feel. But that being said, because of how like it did, there's a lot of games out there that I feel like weren't enjoyed at the time, and so a lot of people, I think, have been able to go back and enjoy some of those games by buying ports that were made on the Switch, or made for the Switch, and I think that's worth noting. But back to Bayonetta as a whole, right? There's a lot of money that went into programming that game. There's a lot of math that went into that. There's a lot of math that went into just everything, like marketing, developing, everything, all those things and more. And I feel like that's worth noting. And then for me, as a gamer, and this is the same for a lot of you all out there, when you're buying games, you want to know that you have, that you're going to get your money's worth, or you want to know that you're taking a reasonable risk. So I feel like if you got Bayonetta or Bayonetta 2 when they were full price, so like $60, then I do feel like you're getting your money's worth because you're getting a lot of hours out of the gameplay. You're getting some varied gameplay. You're giving a game that's going to me, like urge you to play it again. And so I feel like it is a good buy. And I feel like as a gamer, you got to consider these things, right? There's a lot of math involved when you're buying a game because there's a lot of math in buying the console for the game. There's a lot of math in buying the game itself, and you have to consider the money you have. You have to consider the kind of experience that you're getting. You're going to have to consider the amount of time that you're putting in the game and how much time that you can get out of that game, right? There's a lot of math in all of that. But if we're talking about just Bayonetta, like going back to that, Bayonetta is an awesome action game. It is a thrill through and through. And there's a lot of math in how it works and how it flows and functions. There's a lot of math in the music, a lot of math in the graphics, a lot of math in the physics, the programming, the marketing, all of the things that I mentioned before. And I think that's really cool because you can't have gaming without math. You can't have a lot of things without math. And one of the big things that I wanted to do with videos like this and my channel as a whole and all the other things that I have planned down the line is that I want people to know that math is everywhere. It's not just what we were taught in class. What we were taught in class is supposed to allow us to talk about what the universe is doing better. It's supposed to help us use what we know better. But we often miss context, or we don't go far enough, or we just do like really outdated things in school. And I want to change all of that. I want to have a different conversation about math because we can do calculations all day. We can know this algorithm, that algorithm, this equation, that equation, whatever. But if we don't talk about math in a different context, a lot of people are going to remain afraid of it or disinterested in it, and that number will only grow as we go forward through time. So yeah, I want to change that. And that being said, Bayonetta and Bayonetta 2 are awesome games. I suspect Bayonetta 3 will be also an awesome game. Bayonetta is, I think, a really important part of gaming. And for several reasons, but I think like just this history is saying something. Because if you go and you track it back, it's like right um, with Bayonetta 2, it is a really cool combination of things because it's like you had Platinum Games working with Nintendo and Sega. Nintendo and Sega used to be rivals, but now you see them working together more and more over time, and like it's impressive to see that. It's cool to see that because at the end of the day, gaming, I think getting past our rivalries is cool. Like for me, I just want to play good games. So like seeing some juggernauts work together like that is cool. And then so you had Nintendo and Sega, former rivals, working together with Platinum Games, which is awesome. And Platinum Games, like I said, is one of my favorite developers. And there would be no Platinum Games if Hideki Kamiya didn't work on Devil May Cry, didn't have his own team after that working on games like Beautiful Joe and Akami and all of those good things. And with Devil May Cry, that is one of my favorite series. So it's nice to see that it impacted the gaming, not just because it revolutionized the action genre, but because it led to things like Platinum Games. It led to things like Bayonetta, like Metal Gear Rising. It led to a bunch of cool games, and it led to my favorite game at the end of the day, because my favorite game is Nier Automata, and there would be no Nier Automata without Platinum Games, no Platinum Games without Devil May Cry. And that being said, I don't think there'd be a Nier Automata without Bayonetta. Because Bayonetta is one of the games from Platinum that I think is like better known than some of their other projects. So I feel like if that wasn't successful and well known, then we might not have gotten a lot of things down the line, and that'd be a shame because you miss getting collaborations like Square Enix and Platinum Games and the beautiful game that is Nier Automata, and like that would be a shame. That being said, I hope you all enjoyed this video. I hope you try Bayonetta and Bayonetta 2 if you've never tried those games. If you have, feel free to talk in the comments about those. Feel free to have a conversation with me about that. And the thing with a lot of these videos, well, really all of them, is to start a larger conversation, to get people to think about things differently. But I really like people contributing too. So please feel free to add to the conversation. How did you see Bayonetta using a map? Like, was it a way that I had mentioned that you want to elaborate on? Was it a way that I didn't think about? Feel free to let me know. Either way, I'll see you in the next one. Professor Prime out.